I am very lucky because I get to A, follow Stephanie. B, I get to talk about probably the most entertaining topic of the day, audits and compliance. Woohoo! Okay, here we go. So I'm going to talk to you about our sort of four main lenses or areas of activity. And as I get into my presentation, it'll kind of click for you why we decided to include this part today, because there's some really great information out there too. As Stephanie says, tiger tidbits out there for you. So we look at the world of auditing and compliance with state law and certification law through four sort of lenses or areas, and those are here on the screen. There would be like the pending audit, which comes in. We get some information from the Registry of Educational Personnel. We look at certificate compliance audits. We also look at renewals and whether or not educators are putting in information correctly and completely. And we're also going to be starting looking at how districts are delivering and using DPPD, or District Provided Professional Development. So please know that those are some areas that we look at, and they all have kind of a different system, but they're very important because state law and the Auditor General requires us to do the periodic reviews of documentation and proper use of certificates. And after all, these are very, very important things, and they need to be checked up on once in a while. So I'll go through kind of each one, give you kind of an overview here. I know we only have about 5 minutes. We are a little bit ahead, so I may have a couple extra comments for you. But in terms of our state aid audits, we call them state aid audits, and they're really what they are is they're to make sure that districts are complying with state law and about the certification and hiring certified personnel. And we look at two questions: are they properly certified, but also are they assigned correctly? Sometimes we will catch some districts a little bit by surprise because they're like, oh, you know, it's not just that they were certified, but also were they teaching in the correct placement. In fact, after I'm done, I'm going to ask Chris to come up and talk about appropriate teacher placement. So some of that stuff will be discussed a little later on today. But those are important questions for you, and they're important questions for us as well. And so under that aegis of state aid audits, we think about looking at the pending reports. The pending are the districts that report an educator as pending certification at the time that they collect the rep data. And so we go back and we take a look at all of those educators and say, were they or were they not certified, and were they or were they not properly assigned, and why not? We also have two other areas, and I've had some lovely phone calls with some districts of late because they get an investigation letter from my unit, and my name's on there. They call me and they say, well, at the top of the paper there was something called an internal complaint. What does that mean? The word complaint isn't a very nice word. What does that mean? And I simply say, well, we can get information about out of compliance situations from a number of different sources. One of them is the pending report, but sometimes we find out from, for example, phone calls that might come to the office. We're helping educators, and they say, well, you know, I've been working kind of outside my certification for a couple of weeks now. What do I have to do to make it all okay? And so they say, hey, Phil, here's one for you and your wonderful team. So that you know just kind of where we get our information. It is not, this is not kind of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of a deal, nor is it sort of like, if you pardon the expression, a witch hunt kind of thing. We don't go and randomly pull unless it's an audit, but that's something that's sort of like numerically controlled. We don't just say, you know, we woke up and we don't really like Kalamazoo Public Schools today. We're going to whack them. We're not going to do that. So you know, we do get information. We actually do have a form. It is kind of governed by a standardized process. So internal complaints kind of come to us via phone call. They can come to us because we notice something that doesn't look right in our state database systems or our MOEX lookups. External complaints, we've gotten some. They've been emails or letters to us. Sometimes I've had districts that self-report saying, we messed up, we know it, we're going to get better. And I'd love to see them. I wish I could, There's nothing we really can do under state law to give them a break or not, but hey, you know what? I loved seeing a district saying, we're doing our own work, we noticed these three things, and it's a process improvement. If you have a state aid penalty applied to you, look at it like that. You know, I've had some great talks with districts that say, okay, well, we get it, but now this won't happen again. Okay, best we can do in those situations. But again, no complaints are considered to have any grounding until they're fully investigated through a standardized process. And I put that in today's presentation because I've actually recently had, it was just this week too, it was actually it's very relevant. You know, somebody called and they said, well, I got this letter and it looks like you're penalizing us. And I said, nope, we are investigating you for a possible out of compliance situation. All you have to do is just respond to our, we have kind of a Survey Monkey tool. Just respond to that. If you want some extra information, you can give it to me via email. I'm here, I'm a human being, you know. You can come talk to me, give me a phone call, give me an email, and we'll think through all your information. The reason why that's also, very important is because there's often situations that need to be looked at as we go through. Not all one size fits all. I've got, for example, a situation where I was talking to a superintendent and they said, well, this person came from Ohio with an Ohio certification. So that was okay, right? I said, nope, got to have Michigan certification. And so often it's a learning experience. We hope to standardize the process so that we can stop taking money away from students. That's ultimately what we want to do. So that you know, if you get somebody from out of state, they can't just automatically start the first day of school. Okay, you've got to get the Michigan certification, and you work with the wonderful, the fantastic consultants in PECs to be able to talk that educator through that situation. Speaking of that and servicing the individual educators. It's very important at this point to get a kind of a special note out to you. It may actually sound obvious, but then again, we shouldn't take anything for granted in this kind of a thing, especially when amounts are being penalized from your state aid deduction from districts. You really have to think through the logic here, and thinking through the logic may help you. What's very important to remember here is that although the school district is the one that faces the penalty, they actually face a deduction from their state school aid. The certificate is the personal property of the educator. And that's really important because as a certificate holder, that person's responsible for maintaining and knowing about our system, our electronic system, and what is next. Again, like just to share with you, I won't name anybody, obviously, I don't mean to do that, but there were some phone calls that I've had this last month where someone has said, this is really too bad because, I don't like this because the teacher told us that they got all their documentation in. So they should be okay. They're certified, right? Just let it go. I can't do that. Not until payment and approval happens on the MOEX system, at the hands of the educator requesting that, is the certification valid, okay? It's under the law. So that's something that maybe you can also take back to teachers with whom you may have had those conversations, saying, listen, by the first day of school, you have to get that all in. And if it's not in, you can't prove it, you have to work with MD to get that done. And some people have said, I've actually had a very nice and open conversation with people saying, the district superintendent saying, it's my fault. And I said, well, you know what? You are going to want to catch up with your teachers, yes. But ultimately, that certificate is the property of the individual educator. And so I like what Stephanie said a moment ago when she said sometimes educators don't always know what their responsibility is. If you think about that, they have a huge responsibility for maintaining all of the documentation on MOEX and making sure it is accurate and valid. And along that line, some other types of audits we do is certificate compliance audits. Fraud is a real thing. That is entirely possible. It's sad to think about, but that is entirely possible. We have already looked at, in some cases, our audits have uncovered possible cases of fraud. I hate talking about it, but you know what? We have to. When you make an application on the MOEX system, and a lot of teachers may not realize that because it's a website and they go through bit by button by button, and they have to click the button that says I certify that all the information is true and accurate. Okay, when they do that, they're making that promise between us and the MDE, or I'm sorry, themselves and us. So that is also another important thing to maybe take back to your teachers. You certify, So if they say, oh, there's a fraud problem, then that may be why. So another couple of types of audits we do are recurring and sort of like, we call them process audits because they're routine, periodic, and standardized. They sort of are started on their own. We do a sort of a random sampling. But please know that we go back and we look at all the information that's been uploaded. We look at a certain percentage, and we look at our renewals as well as how the DPPD is being used. And so there's a couple new things that we're going to be doing. And so I'm glad to be part of this whole gathering and be able to tell large groups of people. You may be seeing some information come out to different districts about we're going to be asking, for example, for some proof of DPPD and when. Okay, it does not again mean that we don't think you did it wrong. It doesn't mean we don't think you did it right. It just means that we're doing our audits, and these are things you're going to want because under state law, we got to make sure this whole system is correct. So I should, I'm glad to have mentioned that. They're very serious though, because like I said, all audits may result in the penalties of state aid, or in some cases, we can take action against the individual certificate holder. So they should be taken very seriously. We have received sometimes some feedback from districts that say, this isn't really a big deal, is it? They say, oh, it's a big deal. So I thought I might share with you a couple of steps in the auditing process so you know that it is a standardized process. This is right here, what you see here is our pending report, because I do also talk to some wonderful school administrators who benevolently ask, well, okay, so how did my name come up, or how did this kind of happen? We will automatically get a submission we will actually automatically get a report from CEPI, which is our Center for Educational Performance and Information. They're the ones who administrate the database for the Registry of Educational Personnel, or the REP. So we will automatically get a periodic submission from them. We look at anomalies. CEPI and our team looks at the different data anomalies. We then go back to our MOEC system and we compare that with our REP data, and we look at, for example, we noticed that this looks funny. A school district had a teacher who might have been out of compliance because their teacher assignment didn't match what they claimed. For example, their endorsement doesn't match their assignment. So we look at situations like that. We contact the school. We have a letter that goes out just saying you're under investigation, but that sounds kind of bad, doesn't it? But it is an investigatory letter, so we do have to be honest about what that is. They respond to our SurveyMonkey tool, and then we either recommend a penalty or we clear them, and then we give them the notification. So it's kind of a simple system in a way, but it also is it's governed by rule, and it's governed by standardized process. In some cases, I also have a little note too, in some cases we notify other MDE offices. For example, we also work with the Office of Special Education too, because in some cases we'll get information about special education teachers that may be out of compliance, so we work with them too. So, we kind of have to cover all the different bases. CTE, for example, is another office with whom we work for these kinds of things, for like adult education, things like that. So I'm going to be here later on taking some more questions, because I bet there's some more specific things out there. I know I kind of ran through the audits process fast, but I also gave you a few things to think about there. So I'll be available later. For right now, though, I'd like to invite Krista Reed back. Krista is going to talk to you about appropriate teacher placements as kind of a follow-up to some of the things I've said here. Thanks, everybody.